Hey guys, this is God of Politics. I'm looking to a brand new video, but before we get started with this video, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also join the Discord that is linked down in the description. But in today's video, I'm going to be doing another election prediction video, but not for 2020, for 2024. Now, obviously in the 2020 election, we have Joe Biden and his VP, who's going to be a woman, versus Donald Trump with Vice President Mike Pence as his VP choice. And that's the 2020 election, but this is the 2024 election. This could really happen whether Biden wins or Biden loses. If Biden wins, he most likely won't run again in 2024. And if Trump wins, he'll be term limited and there'll have to be a new Republican candidate as well as a new Democratic candidate. So this scenario could happen in either scenario for this 2020 election. But I have chosen the candidates of Andrew Cuomo and Stacey Abrams versus Mike Pence and Nikki Haley. In the last video for 2024 that I did, it was Andrew Cuomo versus Ron DeSantis. So this is, quite a different video. I have different candidates with different strengths. Nikki Haley, for example, is a neoconservative from the state of South Carolina. Mike Pence is a former governor, then turned vice president from the state of Indiana. Andrew Cuomo is the governor of New York, and Stacey Abrams was candidate for governor of Georgia. She, I'm assuming by 2024 she would have had some form of elected office that would have made her a little bit more qualified to be vice president, but Andrew Cuomo is also very qualified in and of itself. So I'm going to be doing the election prediction video for these candidates. So as always, I'll start off with the safe states. First, the Republicans. I do believe that they would win Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Utah, Alaska, both of the Dakotas, as well as all Nebraska except for the 2nd District, as well as Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Iowa, a state that's turning quite red, Indiana, his home state, Kentucky, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, South Carolina, West Virginia, Ohio, as well as a state that's trended very red as well Maine's 2nd District, a very rural area that's become a lot more Republican in recent years. So those are all the safe electoral votes for the Republicans, with Mike Pence totaling up to 150 safe electoral votes. And then for Andrew Cuomo and Stacey Abrams, I do believe they would win Washington, Oregon, California, that western coast area, as well as Colorado and New Mexico areas that have been trending blue for quite a while now, as well as Hawaii, Illinois, and some of these other normal states: New York, Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, as well as Maine's 1st District, New Jersey, Maryland, Delaware, D.C., as well as Virginia, a state that's trended blue much because of those Fairfax counties up in the north. That's made the state very blue overall. So, that's 210 safe electoral votes for the Democrats and 150 safe electoral votes for the Republicans. Getting into these likely states, there are actually no likely states for either party, which is actually quite an interesting thing to see. This is going to be a very hotly contested election with many swing states that are going to be very close. But getting into the lean states, however, first, I do believe that the state of Wisconsin will be a lean Republican state. If we look at the state of Wisconsin, it's trended red faster than some of these other Rust Belt areas have. And, part of that's due to the influence of those WOW counties and some of those other rural areas up to the north, and, some of those western areas, excluding areas like Madison and Milwaukee. Excluding those two areas, most of the state is Republican. And so, you have a lot of the legacy Dems, those rural Democrats leaving the party in Wisconsin, making the state overall more Republican, as opposed to some of these other Rust Belt areas like Minnesota, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, which may take a little bit longer to become as red as Wisconsin. But I do believe that Wisconsin would be lean red, at least for this election. And then for the Democrats, for the lean states, actually, the likely state would be the state of Nevada. Nevada would be a state that is going to go likely. I do believe, there has been somewhat of a trend from Latinos over to the Republican Party, but I don't think that with Mike Pence and Nikki Haley, they're necessarily going to do that well. If you look at 2004, for example, George Bush won 45% of the Hispanic vote, and then, McCain won 20-something percent. So it's very elastic in some ways, and I don't believe that just because Donald Trump may do a little bit better with Hispanics this time, it's going to prove that, it's an overall trend of the Republican column for Hispanics. And so I do believe that Nevada is going to go to the Democrats by a likely margin for that reason. But getting into these lean margin states, first, I do believe Arizona would go by a lean margin. Arizona is a state that's trended quite a lot, actually, to the Democratic column. I think in this scenario, it would go by around 4 to 5 percentage points. That Maricopa County suburban area of Phoenix has become a lot more Democrat in recent years, and has become very quickly very Democrat. And I expect that trend to continue, actually. And Republicans don't have too many areas to gain in those rural areas as opposed to some other states like North Carolina, for example, which we'll talk about later. But I do believe Arizona will go by a lean margin to the Democrats, as well as Nebraska's 2nd district. This is also a very suburban district. People are saying, the suburban effect is just because of Trump. It's not just because of Trump. It's kind of, the Republican Party's changed a lot from what it used to be like, and this is kind of reflective of that they're losing some of these suburban areas but gaining in the rural areas. It's kind of a national realignment that we're seeing, especially in 2020, but those effects will carry over to 2024, and so that's something that you're going to see, and it's going to be exemplified by Nebraska's 2nd district, which is very suburban, and I do believe will go to Andrew Cuomo by a lean margin, as well as the state of Georgia, another one of those states where Republicans really don't have much room to gain in those rural areas, where they're already at 80-something% of the vote, whereas Democrats have a lot of room to gain in these suburban areas, which happen to be the largest counties in the state, which are making the state much closer overall. There's even some talk about the state going to Joe Biden this time, and so I do think that Democrats do have the ability to win in 2020, and especially I do believe they're heavily favored in 2024, pushing it to a lean margin there. And that's the final state that's going to go by a lean margin is actually New Hampshire here. New Hampshire is quite a weird state to predict because it is a very white state. It is quite a rural state. It's very similar to Vermont in many reasons, but it's a lot less Republican than Vermont. And why is that? There's a number of reasons. But as, predicting it for the 2024 election is quite difficult to predict, how these trends are going to follow through and carry into the 2024 election. I do believe that Democrats are going to win this state, but it is going to be quite close, and it is only 4 electoral votes. And another one of these things is that there are going to be electoral vote changes in this map. I haven't put these electoral vote changes in because we're thinking about it in terms of now, but if you do change it, the result would be quite similar anyway, because California will lose some, but Texas will gain some, but also North Carolina will gain some. So it kind of transfers out across the board, so I haven't put them in for that reason. And then that's all the lean margin states. Democrats are already up to 248 electoral votes here. Republicans are only at 160 electoral votes here after the lean margin states, getting into the tilt margin states, of which there are a lot of. First, with the Republicans, I do believe that they would win. Actually, no, Republicans would win the state of Texas by a tilt margin. At this point, probably going to have 41 electoral votes, but I've left it at 38 again. But this is a state that's trending blue very fast, and I do believe that Mike Pence might do a little bit better than Donald Trump would in this scenario because of the kind of Republican he is. That's, more Bush kind in some senses, along with Nikki Haley, and that's not to say that these suburban trends still won't happen. This is going to be, one of the biggest swing states, definitely the biggest in terms of electoral vote numbers, but also the biggest in terms of the number of times people are going to be campaigning there, things like that. Because Texas, whether you like it or not, it is going to become a Democratic state eventually, and I do believe that this could be the year that it happens, but as of now, I will slightly put it in favor of the Republican Party there, as well as the state of Florida. I do believe, these two states make up, 67 electoral votes, which is a pretty large number, and they're both going to go tilt Republican. They're going to be states Republicans are going to have to put a lot of resources into winning. Florida, those northern counties are becoming a lot more Republican, but, can they improve in some of those urban areas, those suburban areas? It's going to be very hard to tell, and Florida's a very close state regardless of what happens, and I do believe in this scenario, it would slightly favor the Republicans there. And then that's actually all of the Republicans. Republicans are going to be at 227 effectively, guaranteeing a Democratic victory. I do believe first the Democrats would win North Carolina. This is a state that's going to be very close as well. Democrats have to gain in some of those suburban areas, and which can offset the losses they may get in the rural areas. But also, if you look at it, 2012 to 2016, the fact that the national environment trended a couple points red and the margin of victory for the Republicans virtually stayed the same proves that this is the state that Democrats can win in the future, and it's going to be quite difficult for them to win in, but it is something that I do believe they can do. And then all three of these Rust Belt states actually here, I do believe, are going to go to the Democratic column. These are states that overall are on a trend towards the Republican column. Minnesota, you have those northern areas, the Iron Belt, where you have a lot of legacy Democrats becoming more Republican. Same thing in Michigan. But, those suburbs in some of these areas, especially Philadelphia suburbs, where those voters can turn out, especially if they have someone like Stacey Abrams on the ticket, in those Pittsburgh areas. And, Republicans already have a large proportion of the vote in some of these rural areas. How much room do they have to gain? And while they have a lot of room to gain in Minnesota is is also a more Democratic state overall. So, how is that going to affect it overall? I do believe these states are all going to be very narrow. Texas, Florida, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, as well as Maine at large, but I will put it to Democrat. These are all going to be very close states, and while they could really go either way, it's really going to come down to these states are like Texas and Florida. And the Rust Belt's going to have influence too, but you have to remember the Rust Belt's going to have less influence overall because there's less people there. It's going to come down to more of these Sun Belt areas, which are undoubtedly becoming more Democratic. And, Republicans are going to have to do something about that. And while I haven't changed the electoral vote numbers again, that's due to some other reasons, just because, I want to look at it in terms of the map we have now. But, Democrats would have won regardless of that anyway. And so overall, this is the map: 311 electoral votes for Andrew Cuomo and Stacey Abrams, 227 electoral votes for Mike Pence and Nikki Haley. So this would be quite an interesting map to see, a very hotly contested map with many close states. But yeah, so thank you all for watching this video. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also join the Discord that is linked down in the description. But again, guys, thank you all for watching, and I will see you guys later.